Welcome to Mastering CS Candid Leader Insights, the podcast where we dive into the world of customer success with industry leaders. I'm your host, Irina Cismas, and today I'm joined by Viola Marku, Head of Customer Success at WunderGraph, an open source platform that helps engineering teams manage their API at scale. Viola, I'm happy to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Help me understand your world at WunderGraph today. What does the company do? What does CS look like? And how is the team set up?
Yeah, a great question. So, WunderGraph is an open source platform to help teams manage federated APIs at enterprise scale, be them GraphQL, REST, gRPC, SOAP, etc., in a single unified graph. And we are a deeply technical tooling for these teams, and we support use cases at scale. Some of our customers are the likes of eBay, who manage all their traffic through WunderGraph, which is a behemoth amount of traffic. But we also operate with other industries like Royal Caribbean for their fleet, their naval fleet, and systems on board their ships. We work with entertainment companies like Paramount, Jewel, and we also work with startups or scale ups that also offer different technologies to their end users. And we've been in the market for about 4 years now, and we've evolved a lot over the time we've been operating. I've joined about a year ago, and I joined the team because I actually had previous experience working with the founding team, and it was a great decision on my part to jump on board with WunderGraph. Yeah, that's pretty much us. In terms of the customer success team that we have, we're actually very small, but we are mighty. The team is very focused, and we operate specifically with senior customer success engineers. And this is intentional because we, operate in a deeply technical market, and we need to be really up to par to the technology that we're offering, all the feature set and so on, and be also ready to spot opportunities where a customer might want to adopt a certain feature set, and do that with curiosity and intention. We operate with a very small set of tooling, I have to say, Irina, which actually serves us really well at the stage we're at, because, as a startup, we're still laying the foundation, as the proverbial train is running really fast and we're still there putting the road up. But it's a good approach, I think, to have a little smaller team, smaller set of tooling, less overhead in terms of processes, and just see what we need, see what serves us, and then scale it back up. So yeah, I have to say we are running.
I think that's the dream of any CEO, operating in a small lean team with a small tool set and trying basically to optimize the impact of the resources that you have available, even if those are people, tools, or processes. There are so many follow-up questions that came from what you just shared. And I want to ask you, because I also know that you were just promoted from the CSM to head of CS. So basically, from an individual contributor, now you have the overview of the team. So how do you manage to keep the team lean, and where do you put technology on top to basically enrich, or basically to help the team perform? What do you have? What's the thinking beside this formula?
It's a great question. It's definitely a balancing act we have to make, because a promotion in the startup world does not mean you're letting your individual contributor, hat fade away. In fact, a lot of my day still revolves into speaking with customers, into speaking with users, and making sure things are running smoothly, and also interacting with the team constantly. We keep that communication open, and we have the luxury to do. I think as a startup, it's sometimes frowned upon that you have to, get your hands dirty with so many different things, but actually that's the beauty of it. You have much more ownership, and also much more ability to set the direction of things the way you are perceiving them to be more ideal. And that's definitely one positive. how we balance the act of setting up those tools and let's say processes in place is really trying to see the cost versus the benefit of what we need to do. Because as you said, we have so much going on. We need to make sure that we are bringing on board, we can manage, we can set up, we can manage, we can take that cost to set up that investment. And then ongoing, it will be used. It will be part of our habit as a team. And so it's important that whatever we are observing often comes from a pain point. It's the biggest motivator in a lot of, the use cases that we see in our own customers. And if we see a huge pain point that we're experiencing, typically that's where we naturally stand up and go to fix it. And that's really mentality of startup. You go in where the fire is bigger and try to resolve it. And the other thing is probably one of the moments I'm most proud of right now as a team lead is seeing the culture of the team, a do-it culture, a fix culture, that we are putting together some small but mighty improvements as we go along. And some of the teams I work with are based in the US, and sometimes I wake up in the morning and they've done something overnight that was a small quality of life improvement for us. And it's such a fantastic feeling. So I would say the baseline of it perhaps is actually the culture of the team that wants to spot and fix, irrespective of what the tooling will look like. Yeah.
And what helps the team to be productive? Because you mentioned tools. What are those tools and how do you combine it? What have you built? What's in the backstage, I would say, to basically keep this format of lean team?
It's a great question. We have been utilizing a tool called Pylon for quite a while now.
Yeah.
It helps us really manage the communication with customers via tickets, via email, whichever avenue the communication is coming from. Pylon is able to ingest it and assign it to the correct account. But it also has a lot of AI features. It has a lot of automation available and really supports as well the rota of the team. For example, ticket assignment. There's a ton of analytics that we can leverage on. And it's also able to run NPS and CSAT scoring. We're currently leveraging the NPS survey every quarter. We do not go as granular as the CSAT as it stands now because we have quite a close relationship with all our customers. We're in that fantastic golden era. And NPS serves us really well, combined with other tooling that we have. So I would say Pylon does a great job for us at the moment. Circleback, our AI note taker and call recorder tool, it's also really good because it takes away quite a bit of an overhead that we had taking notes, taking important points as you're also trying to manage a conversation. I'm still someone that takes post-it notes as I go in the call. I think that's probably because that's how I grew up learning. You write, and sometimes, that feeling of writing slows down the learning piece, and the cognitive can take more space. And yeah, definitely the transcriber tool is super important for us. The awesome thing about Pylon is that we can actually integrate it with Circleback.
Yeah.
Which means that all the calls that we have with customers, which are quite frequent, they're actually ported in on the account level for the customer, and they update all the conversation and the status of the customer itself. And there's also the ability to have notebooks, custom notebooks per account, which means we can create specific, let's say, documents about, let's say, product wish list or really specific things we really want to capture about that customer's experience with us. And that's porting in all that information that we have available. That takes away a lot of the overhead. And I think that alone, it's helping us manage a very lean team without losing on the quality of the delivery. And then other tools that we use a lot, Slack and Teams, for our communication with customers directly. I think it's taken over email because it's feels a lot more conversational, instantaneous, and you can hop on a huddle with the customer very quickly. It feels a much more closer relationship than just to have an email type of support, especially in this day and age where we're not traveling as much and we're not necessarily working with geolocalized teams within our regions. I work with teams in New Zealand, and that becomes quite difficult to create a bit of a more closer connection with the customers. And that's also great tooling that we have at our availability. And then things like Notion. Yes.
I'm also curious, how do you leverage the AI? because you work in a technical environment and you have a technical background. And the latest conversations I'm having with senior CS people are feels more like talking to an engineer than talking to a CS, because now everybody is building AI agents for CS. Everybody is leveraging Cloud Code. Everybody is leveraging ChatGPT. Meta to summarize this way of thinking. So I think that's a new wave. You being also with a technical background, I would assume, but I might be wrong, that you are also leveraging AI. So I'm curious, how is an engineer person transformed into a CS leveraging the AI wave as we speak?
We definitely are. We definitely, it's also part of the success of the team and in managing it with this a sort of like a leaner approach. And I think that also insulates us from changes in the future that might affect, how our team will develop and expand, right? So it takes a very measured sense there. I personally think that AI approach, like a complete teetotal AI approach on utilizing it for customer success, works specifically with self-serve toolings that you don't necessarily need to have a relationship with your customers to fully make sure that they're leveraging it correctly, that they're able to set it up correctly, that they're making the most out of it. In complex technological products, we need to really triangulate the automation with the human, because that's really where we can still deploy that curiosity, a human curiosity, to understand what the customer is actually trying to achieve and what's coming next, what's on the horizon, without losing also sight of that human connection that really brings us such a wealth of conversations, of insight, and a lot of the time helps us think out of the box. And so triangulating that between the data, the pure, mechanical answering with the human touch, it's important. How we actually utilize it at WunderGraph, specifically the customer success team, is we utilize it to actually help debug, reproduce any issues very quickly using Codex. And this allows a customer success engineer to really go in, quickly check if what the customer is reporting is something legitimate of what's happening in the product or potentially a misconfiguration, and allows us to skip the back and forth with the engineering teams in almost 90% of the cases. And what that means, of course, is engineering has more time to actually do engineering and new product development and innovate. And what it means for us in customer success is a quicker response to the customer and supporting them in a faster fashion. So it's a win-win altogether. With Codex, we can actually even suggest fixes and even speed that process alongside, and it's a huge win for us. With Pylon, the AI features there, they help us pre-craft some of the responses because it can be integrated with your code base and your documentation. So that also gives us a strong edge there. And what it means in practice is that we're able to serve a wider amount of customer within the same sort of response time that we would give had we on AI, with a smaller subset, maintaining high quality, maintaining great NPS score, and really, still managing a very workable, amount of requests. So yeah, I would say this is pretty much a bit high overview of what's currently happening.
I want to switch from the company angle to you, and I want to understand how your world changed from the moment you switched from individual contributors to head of CS. What was different? How did you manage to adapt? Because you work in a startup, you mentioned earlier that you cannot drop entirely the individual contributors, so you still have to manage customers while also being the team leader of the team. How do you combine those two worlds, and how do you manage to do in parallel two jobs, basically?
It's a great question. I think it's potentially all down to the understanding that the cultural layer is what makes the team work cohesively. Ultimately, we can tackle really anything that comes on our way as that particular, cohesive team. And so what changed for me was really have a different optic on team. I'm really happy and proud of all the people that we have in the team. They work so beautifully together and they have such a great combination of characters, and they fit wonderfully within our ecosystem. And that means it's a lot easier for me to really sit down and have this genuine conversation about the customers, being super transparent about where we stand, being super clear of also what's happening, and take on board that, their perspectives, their approaches, and so on. In practice, it means that we really operate as a strong team, and what's changed is really considering the collective versus that individual aspect. So focusing a little bit also on the marketing of our team, which is also something that, I felt in my career, it's overlooked sometimes by the leads or the head of teams. It means really resurfacing the great work we're doing, resurfacing the wins, sometimes resurfacing also, of course, the lessons that we have, to make sure that the work does not go unnoticed, because the work that we do as CS, it's really the apex of the whole organization efforts. And what we are doing is really resurfacing it for everyone to see what ultimately hits the customer and how they make use of it. I would also say that within, the world of AI and the life-changing adoption that we currently see across different industries, maintaining your individual contributor hat is a great asset to have, because it really allows you to keep an ear on the ground, what's happening, and keep that sense of what the customer is saying or where a certain adoption pattern is heading to. And I would say that's a great, I'd say, strength to maintain. Yeah.
What's the biggest challenge you are trying to overcome? What's the thing that you want to fix until the end of the year? What's your priority? Let's not talk about the challenges or the struggles. Tell me what's on your agenda to try to improve until the end of the year. What's your main focus now?
It's a fantastic question. With a growing team, we want to make sure that we have set up all the correct processes that serve us well in the stage we're at. It means, making sure that we have a strong customer health scoring, for example. It doesn't just cover our enterprise customers, but covers all customers across tiers. And that, I think, is one of our big goals for the year. So applying that approach across. Of course, that's leveraging the power of AI and automation and so on. So it's a completely achievable goal for us. And I think also making sure that whatever process we take on and we decide to run with, that we make so in a sort of sustainable way, so that it's not one of the processes that I've seen many times in the past that get adopted and then dropped after a few months or after a few quarters, and then it just gets forgotten, taken over by other priorities. I think we need to always be introspective in our departments and be data-driven, but also have a bit of a reflection on the growth, the stages we're at. In startups, you often don't realize how quickly you scale, your customer base, the number of tickets that you are handling, the number of engagement that you have. And it's also important to reflect on that growth, I would say.
You've been a UX researcher, a solution engineer, a strategic account manager, and now a head of CS, all in deeply technical companies. Is there a habit, a way of thinking, or something you learned the hard way early on that period that still shows up in how you run CS today?
That's a great question. I think in my time as a UX researcher, I was deeply fascinated with the way we utilize software, from the interface down to the human-computer interaction behaviors. And I find it fascinating. I was really curious to understand how we developed over the last 40 years or so these elements, these UI elements that kind of help us navigate toolings and so on. And that's where it struck me that curiosity is really a big driver. Really getting to what's happening. Why are we trying to fix something? Why is the customer experiencing this problem? And I noticed over the years that there's a tendency of jumping into fix quickly for the customer, rather than stepping behind and asking the why. And probably the biggest lesson has been making sure that why is clearly understood, because it can be a very expensive mistake to jump in and fix without the clear answer first. And you might speak with a customer and they really want a fix or a feature that we're not delivering, but perhaps another customer also wanted that particular feature in a slightly different way. And without really deep diving into their why, you would fix it just for one subset of customers. And it's a missed opportunity to really look at the data, look at the information we have, and take all of that into consideration. So I would say the biggest lesson is lead with curiosity, all your conversations with customers, get to the why in every interaction, be it explicit or implicit, just get to that.
This was an interesting conversation. I have to admit that I don't often speak with the head of CS in 1 month into the role. So I don't get the chance of basically knowing what's happening and what's behind the curtains when you are, okay, in the first month of the mandate. And I genuinely want to say thank you for accepting the invite and for speaking so openly about what's happening in the current CS team that you are basically managing. And to everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and mastering customer success.